Powered by Streaming Incorporated.
Wonderful. Well, welcome to Huron. We are delighted to have you here. My name is Sarah Node, and on behalf of both Huron and the Canadian Club of London, I welcome you to our newest building, which is the Frank Holmes Centre for Entrepreneurship, Leadership, and Ethics. This building is intended to really bring the community together for riveting talks and performances such as the one we are here for today. So we're very excited. Thank you so much all for coming. We know the traffic was a little hectic on Western Road, but so we may see a few people trickle in, but thank you very much for arriving on time. I need to put my glasses on. We acknowledge that Huron University is located on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabeg, Haudenosaunee, Lenape-Wauk, and Attawandaron peoples, on lands connected with the London Township and Sombra Treaties of 1796 and the Dish with One Spoon Covenant Wampum. This land continues to be home to diverse Indigenous peoples whom we recognize as contemporary stewards of the land and vital contributors to our society. We would really like to thank our sponsors for this evening's event. The official season sponsor and exclusive educational sponsor is Huron University. So joining us to provide a welcome on behalf of Huron is Dr. Jeff Reed.
Thank you. I know I'm standing between you and Alan Cross, so I'll be brief, but just wanted to bring some brief words of welcome from Huron. We're very proud to be partners with the Canadian Club. And we see our mission at Huron is to create leaders with heart, so that is students with an elite education, but also with a social conscience who want to give back to their society. And we see that mission as entirely in keeping with the partnership with the Canadian Club. Alan Cross, of course, is a celebrity, a cultural commentator. He has a blog. He's a radio personality, et cetera, and above all else, a music commentator. So, here at Huron, we are Canada's oldest, or one of Canada's oldest universities, founded in 1863, and we're very proud to have Alan here today. So, I will pass it back to Sarah. Thank you. Welcome again.
Thanks, Jeff. And Beck Hearing Aid Centre is the proud sponsor for the event tonight. Joining us is Treva Murray.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Sarah. And thank you to the Canadian Club of London for the opportunity to sponsor tonight's event. Alan Cross understands something that we at Beck Hearing preach every day, and that is, for one, the importance of good quality audio, as well as the power of sound to enrich our lives and to maintain our brain health. So it's truly an honor for us to help Alan share his message with you tonight. So thank you.
Thank you, Treva. And we are also grateful for the event sponsorship from the City of London. Representing Tourism London is Corey Crossman, the City of London's Music Industry Development Officer. Corey is also leading London's unique, one-of-a-kind UNESCO City of Music designation. Corey's role is to create conditions for the music industry to grow and thrive in London. Corey?
Well, thank you. I think it's important to recognize why we're here, right? We're here to hear about music in this great community. Canada's first and only UNESCO City of Music. And what this means is that we are one of 59 cities globally that recognize music as a priority and as a tool to help do better, right? And so we work collaboratively with 58 other cities globally in this network to put music into our plans, into our decisions that we make at council, into our day-to-day service delivery as the City of London. I have the privilege and honor to be a music industry development officer, and it's events like this where we can bring our community together to create education and sharing through music, right? We're here for music. Music's the centerpiece to this. A big part of the work that we do is around sustainable development, urban sustainable development. You may have heard of UNESCO's 2030 Sustainable Agenda. It is important to note that Western University is the #1 school in Canada, #3 in the world for sustainable development. So we're thrilled to have people in this community that understand the importance of music and the importance of UNESCO and the United Nations. And I'm happy to be here today and let Alan Cross get up here and do his thing. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Corey. And one last thank you to all of our sponsors. We really appreciate you for allowing these events to happen. So finally, I would like to introduce your host for this evening, the Canadian Club of London President, Mr. Dave Farrow.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for coming tonight. It's so nice to be back in front of a live audience. We've been virtual for the last 3 years since that thing called the pandemic happened. You may have heard about that. And it's nice to be back in person with everybody, so thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for being a member. Thank you for being a sponsor. We've got some contest winners from various radio stations here tonight, so it's great to see everybody. When I think about the mandate for the Canadian Club of London, which is to celebrate Canadians and their achievements, I can't help but think of this guy. And I have to read from a paper because he does so many things. He's a broadcaster, he's a podcaster, he's an author, he's a public speaker, he's an expert in all things music. He's also the host of Canada's longest-running documentary show on radio, close to 1,000 episodes now. The Ongoing History of New Music is the name of the show. Would you please welcome Alan Cross?
Okay. Hi. You know, I'm finally here. I think we started planning this 2 years ago. And it's just so lovely to be able to get out and do things one more time. Thank you for coming. I appreciate it. It's the middle of the week. I'm sure you have better things to do, but you're here, which is great. And what I'd like to talk to you about today is this thing, the brain. Our brains are really weird when it comes to music. And for the next little while, I want to show you exactly how weird it is. What we have between our ears is the most powerful piece of organic matter anywhere in the universe. It weighs about 3 pounds. It runs on about 10 watts, which is less than the bulb in your refrigerator. It has storage approaching or maybe exceeding 2.5 petabytes. It has the equivalent computing power of somewhere around 100,000 laptops, maybe more. And it's 60% fat. There is no biological reason why we are hardwired for music, but yet we are. There are special areas of the brain devoted only to music. Now, why is that? We don't know. It could be our early ancestors were really, really interested in birdsong, and we tried to imitate them. Maybe it was related to language development. Maybe it has something to do with storytelling, because myths and legends can be passed down much more easily through song than it can be through rote recitation. Maybe it has something to do with rituals and chants and religious ceremonies. Whatever the case, I want to give you a little walk through our skulls so we can explore this 3-pound lump of fat between our ears. Now, experiencing music requires 4 of the brain's major parts. We're talking about reactions, we're talking about emotion, we're talking about memory, and we're talking about movement. The first thing we have to talk about is the temporal lobe. There are 2 lobes. We have 2 hemispheres. We have, on the left, something that deals with speech, and on the right, we have something that deals with the structures and patterns of music. Notice how the 2 are separate. Then we have the auditory cortex, about the size of your thumb. You have 2 of them. They're right behind each ear. And what the auditory cortex does is filters and sorts all the audio information that's coming at us, all the noise that's coming at us, and routes everything to the appropriate parts of the brain. For example, it routes speech to the appropriate part of the brain. Ambient noise, background noise, just garbage noise in the background, goes to another. And music, for whatever reason, has its own spot in the brain. And if the auditory cortex senses singing, a special group of neurons will light up. Those neurons do absolutely nothing if we're hearing just speech or instrumental music. They only are activated when you hear singing, and nobody knows why. Then we have the hippocampus. This is where memories are stored. Now, music has its own closet within the hippocampus. We've done some brain damage studies, And imagine somebody who has been in a terrible accident or has had a stroke or some other sort of catastrophic injury, and it wipes out all their memories. Strangely enough, in many cases, the music memories are retained. They're in a different spot, hidden away from our day-to-day memories. Why? Don't know. All we know is that with people who have these catastrophic injuries, their musical memories remain intact. They remember lyrics. They can maybe even play a musical instrument, while the rest of them doesn't work at all. Now let's move to some brain anatomy. Oh, the cerebellum, that's another spot. We'll get to that in just a bit. Let's move to brain anatomy part 2. We have an area here called Broca's brain. This is between the frontal lobe and the temporal lobe. This is where we have speech, the speech centers, and it's also where we express music. There's another area called Wernicke's area. This is next to the auditory cortex, and this analyzes and helps us enjoy music. Then we have the nucleus accumbens. This is the pleasure-seeking part of the brain. It secretes, one of its big jobs is to secrete a hormone called dopamine. Dopamine is when the brain secretes dopamine, we feel pleasure. We feel good. It is the body's feel-good drug. So if, for example, you have an orgasm, dopamine. If you have a shot of cocaine, dopamine. If you listen to music, dopamine. So we really do have sex, drugs, and rock and roll on the brain. Quite literally. Then we have the amygdala. This is where emotion is processed and triggered. It also means, it's also the part of the brain where the chills come from when we hear a good song. That's dopamine as well. Goes to the amygdala, we get, ooh, that's cool. That's a natural reaction. Then we have something called the caudate. Now, the caudate is weird in the sense that it helps us anticipate where music is going. You don't know this, none of us know this, but if we're listening to music, our brain is anticipating what's coming next in the song by up to 15 seconds. So it's, let's put it another way, it's buffering 15 seconds of music that we have yet to hear. That's going to come in very important in just a bit. Then we have the hypothalamus. This is something that regulates thirst, hunger, sleep, heart rate, body temperature, mood. And then the pitumen, which has rhythm, body movements, and coordination. Now the pitumen is, it loves music-generated dopamine. And it encourages, when it's subjected to dopamine, it encourages spontaneous movement. So if you are listening to a song with a good groove, a good beat, it results in something called cortiospinal excitability, otherwise known as the urge to dance. So you hear something that sounds great, extra blood is sent to your legs, your heart rate and breathing patterns change, and the body instinctively syncs up with the music. Using an MRI machine on volunteers, brain researchers in Finland found that we seem to be hardwired to dance. And believe it or not, your dancing is as unique as your fingerprints. Nobody can dance like you. We're all different. I want to do something kind of cool here. Our brains are generally very, very fast when it comes to recognizing a song. We can retrieve practically everything about a song from that musical database that's somewhere in our head because the hippocampus works that quickly. The typical amount of time it takes us to retrieve a musical memory is 100 milliseconds. That's how fast we are. It's faster than a blink of an eye. That's faster than it would take a beam of light to travel around the equator. 100 milliseconds. So I'm going to prove it to you. I'm going to play you something. It's 1/2 of 1 second of one song, and you tell me what it is, okay? Ready? Let's hear it again. Okay, that's right. It is Under the Bridge by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Did you know something weird about what I played? It's backwards. Here's how it's supposed to sound. So you were able to pick out that song in 100 milliseconds from your hippocampus, even though the song was played backwards and it was only 1/2 of 1 second long. It's amazing. Your brain will have none of this when it comes to trying to fool it regarding music. Now, I'm going to... No. Oh, yeah. Okay. There are 13 emotions that music brings forward. This is science. Regardless of who you are, or what kind of music you like, or what kind of, or your cultural background, this study looked at 2,500 people across North America and into China. And here are the 13 emotions that music generates: amusement, joy, eroticism, beauty, relaxation, sadness, dreaminess, triumph, anxiety, scariness, annoyance, defiance, and feeling pumped up. So we've categorized the emotional reactions we have to music, and there are 13 of them. You know that transcendent feeling that comes over you when you're at an amazing show and the performers and the entire audience seems to be totally in sync with the musicians on stage and the music that's being played? That's actually a neurological response generated by what's called mirror neurons in the right hemisphere of your brain. They allow us to get in sync with the thoughts and actions of others in a musical environment. And music is just one of the best ways to get into this state. Music synchronizes the brains of the performers and the audience. And it might help explain why music might sound and feel better when it's experienced live, because you're hooked in chemically to everybody else in the room. This is called entraining, the creation of a bond that allows an individual to have a better time if they're part of a collective. This is probably why live music will never die, because it feels so good when you experience it with a group of other people. Our brainwaves match up so well during a great show that research indicates that going to see live music is actually better for your well-being than doing yoga. It can also lead to some very weird changes in how we perceive music. If the music is just right, the brain will adjust and recalibrate temporal perception. This means, or this explains, why time somehow has no meaning when you're listening to music. You've gone to a show, you're into what's being played on stage, and suddenly it's over. Where did the time go? Minutes and hours can go by in a flash, because those music-induced chemicals resulting from listening to live music actually warps time, your temporal perception. The other thing is what happens between musicians playing together. And if you're in a band, you've probably felt this. Everybody, you're playing, and everybody is on exactly the same wavelength. Everything feels so good. You can't make a mistake. The groove is fantastic. You could go on forever because it just feels so good. Their brains are generating the correct chemicals in exactly the correct amounts using no fewer than 12 distinct parts of the brain. So when people talk about a band having chemistry, they're literally talking about chemistry, brain chemistry in this sense. There's mirror neurons in training and listening with your eyes closed, by the way, is a way to enhance dopamine production, because you shut out all external stimulus, thank you, and you can just concentrate on the music. Now let's talk about shivers. We get chills, we get shivers, we get goosebumps with certain songs. Maybe, not everybody does. Scientists have found that certain music creates very specific electrical activity in an area of the brain called the orbital frontal cortex. This is a reason that we use for processing emotions. These impulses create more activity in the supplementary motor area, part of the brain that controls movement, and the audio processing areas of the right temporal lobe, which is where music appreciation lives. These parts of the brain then work together to get the amygdala to pump out more dopamine, which is, of course, that feel-good hormone. You combine that with the anticipation that we feel, that buffering, when the best parts of a favorite song are coming out. That's the caudate, remember? And we get a tingly chill that emanates from the cerebellum. So that indicates a lot of extra connectivity going on within the brain. Again, not everybody gets chills and goosebumps when they listen to music. People who do get them have more fibers connecting the auditory cortex to those parts of the brain that deal with processing emotions. So you may be literally wired differently than the person next to you. This means, those extra fibers, means that communication between these regions is much better. And better communication allows music and emotion to mingle more frequently and freely in our heads. So you have more of these connecting fibers than most people do if you get chills, and that results in this additional physical response. Now, why this particular physical response? Why the chills? Why the goosebumps? Well, we don't know. Maybe it has something to do with our ability to anticipate what's coming next, or something else that we haven't discovered yet. Neurologists at Queen Mary University in London created a Spotify playlist because they were very fascinated by this phenomenon. They came up with 700 songs most likely to create chills and or goosebumps in people. If you want to try this at home, go ahead. Sadder, slower, less intense, and more instrumental songs work the best. Purple Rain, Only Love Can Break Your Heart from Neil Young, I Will Always Love You from Whitney Houston, How Soon Is Now by the Smiths, Best of You by the Foo Fighters, Creep from Radiohead, and Wonderwall from Oasis are the best for chills and goosebumps. Okay, let's talk about lyrics. We listen to music all the time without paying attention to the words. We all do. We'll even listen and like a song if the lyrics are in a different language. And the reason is because we're into an area of something called sound symbolism. We can appreciate and enjoy sounds, like singing, without really needing to understand what's being sung. You're just enjoying the lyrics as sounds, as pleasant sounds, and not as words. It's only when we really concentrate on the words, if it's a language that we understand, that their meaning begins to sink in. And if the song is in a foreign language, we don't care because it just all sounds good. Again, the human brain has evolved to respond to sound first and what's being sung second. Okay, things have been weird so far, and they're going to get even weirder. So let's talk about loud music. You know that weird, muffled underwater feeling that you have with your hearing when you've been exposed to music at a high volume for an extended period of time? There are two things that are going on here in your head. One is called the acoustic reflex. That means the muscles attached to the bones in the inner ear contract to protect your hearing. It actually closes down to protect your hearing. Less pressure is relayed from the eardrum to the inner ear, so that means you're not going to go deaf quite that quickly. Those muscles eventually relax, and that's when you start hearing better. Your hearing returns to normal. That could be 12, 24, 36 hours after the reflex kicks in. Second, powerful waves of sound will punish the little hairs in our inner ears called stereocilia. And their job is to convert the acoustic kinetic energy of sound waves into electrical impulses that the brain then interprets as sound. Too much volume destroys or impairs cilia, resulting in an inability for them to do their job. If you just sort of annoy them, what happens is normally they're like this around in the inner ear, waving, and every wave means an electrical impulse that goes to the auditory cortex. But if the music is too loud, they kind of get flaccid. And it takes them a couple of days to stand up again. But you can damage them, and once you damage them, they do not grow back. So that's why I'm a big proponent of hearing protection. And if you do have a hearing impairment, there's nothing wrong with wearing hearing aids. People wear glasses. Why wouldn't you wear hearing aids? I actually am the brand ambassador for a hearing aid company called Widex, which spends an awful lot of time helping musicians who have lost their hearing. Another thing, when it comes to loud music, you go to a show on tonight, let's say, and tomorrow night you wake up with that horrible sound. You won't, of course, because you will protect your hearing. You're smarter than that. Don't drink coffee in the morning. For some reason, coffee plus audio overstimulation equals more time for your hearing to get back to normal. Why? Don't know. Here's another one. Your taste in music may be related to the height of your parents or specifically, the parent which did most of the parenting. Now, let's imagine that your mom is short, and because she has shorter legs, she has to work a lot harder to keep up with everybody. So she's moving fast. Mom's carrying you around, and mom's walking at a fast pace. The theory is that babies will tune into that, and when they grow up, they will start to enjoy songs with a quicker rhythm. Conversely, if you have a taller parent who has longer strides and a slower walking rhythm, the sons and daughters of those people apparently grow up to like their music a little slower. Interesting. Why does music sound better when you're high? This is not your imagination. So much of our central nervous system is activated when we listen to music. So there's a lot of computer power going on. The receptors in our brain that respond to cannabis do much the same. They're called CB1 receptors. And when there's cannabis in the blood, these things go hyperactive. It changes our mood, changes our appetite, hence the munchies, and it also changes various types of sensation. Music plus cannabis enhances activity in the mesolimbic dopamine system. That means for every note of music we hear, we get extra dopamine secretion caused by the cannabis. Now, remember that dopamine is the body's feel-good hormone. The more music, the more CBD, the more THC, the more dopamine gets released. And the brain finds this fantastic, wonderfully gratifying. And because being high tends to lock people into the moment by interfering with the creation of short-term memories, the result can be lots and lots of focus. It's very short focus, but it's very intense focus. And that means the music you're listening to suddenly becomes more interesting because our natural need to anticipate what's coming next, remember the codate? It's not working normally. So that 15-second lead time that we have, that buffering, is gone. So we are listening to something as it happens. It's like you're hearing the music note by note. And that means you may be able to pick out things that you've never heard before in the mix. And complex music suddenly makes a whole lot more sense. And don't tell me you don't know what I'm talking about, because I know you do. So no wonder so many musicians and so many music fans say that a little pot is actually good for what they do. Talk to Paul McCartney. He'll say that when Bob Dylan introduced the Beatles to marijuana backstage at Buckingham Palace in 1965, everything blew up for the Beatles because that allowed them to be much more creative. Let's talk about pain management. If you're suffering from some kind of pain, it could be a headache, muscle ache, joint pain, doesn't matter, and you're taking something like Advil or Midol, what you need to do is take some music after you take your pills. Taking ibuprofen will reduce inflammation by 70% on a good day. That counts. Less inflammation, less pain. But you combine ibuprofen with Mozart, and this is again another scientific study, inflammation will decrease not by 70%, but by 90%, which means even less pain. Now, I should point out that they only tried this on mice, and they only used Mozart. But if these findings hold in human trials, and everybody is looking for some kind of pain management strategy, this could be a whole new level of medical treatment. So if you got a headache, take 2 pills, listen to The Marriage of Figaro, call me in the morning. Basically, that's it. And by the way, this has nothing to do with music, but if you have a headache and you take pills and you need to lie down, the most effective way to get that painkiller to your brain is to lie on your right side. Just telling you. Okay, staying healthy with music. We all know that music makes us feel better, and it can be used in all sorts of therapies. I mean, music therapy is a huge, huge area. There is a secret formula, however. I'll give it to you. A study in France determined the exact amount of music we should listen to every day in order to stay healthy. We need to listen to music for 78 minutes. And of that 78 minutes, 14 minutes should be uplifting, exercise your happiness. 16 minutes should be something calming. Another 16 minutes should be music that counteracts sadness. I'm not entirely sure how that means, how that's different from exercising your happiness, but anyway. 15 minutes of motivational music that will help with concentration, and 17 minutes of music that will help you deal with anger. Just saying. Singing in the shower might actually be good for your physical and mental health. There was a small study in the UK that says after 5 days, people feel better about everything if they get up in the morning, have a shower, and sing. Musical anhedonia. This is a very rare condition where music is annoying to someone and even excruciatingly painful. This is classified as an actual neurological condition. These people cannot deprive any pleasure from music. This is different from something called music agnosia, which means that people can recognize a song, recognize music, but will not enjoy it. Oh yeah, that's Live and Let Die by Paul McCartney and Wings. I hate it. People with these particular attributes have reduced functional connectivity between the cortical regions of the brain responsible for processing sound and the regions related to reward. So they can hear something that everybody else thinks is a great song, but because that part of their brain is not connected to the part of the brain that secretes dopamine, they get absolutely no pleasure from it, so why bother listening to music? Moving on. If you find yourself unable to tolerate certain music since the pandemic began, it is not your imagination. Some studies are showing that people subjected to pandemic-related lockdowns became more sensitive to noise, all sorts of noise. And 43% of the people in one particular study say they just can't tolerate loud music the way they used to before the pandemic. We just got used to being alone and having everything very quiet. There's something called beat deafness. This is the inability to identify beat and rhythm. It is a form of congenital amusia. This was first identified in 2011 in a Canadian graduate student from Montreal named Matthew. And what happened in this study is that they brought a whole bunch of students into the room and they played some dancey music and asked people just to move to the music. Matthew couldn't even do that. He did that. It has something to do, he could even bounce up and down with the beat. This is something to do with the auditory cortex and some part of the temporal lobe. Everything else is functioning normally. It might be similar to tone deafness, we don't know, but you can have dance deafness. You just can't dance because there's something, just the way you're wired. It's not exactly a handicap or something that will get you a little blue card so you can park anywhere you want, and how many people take their kid to the doctor saying, I think there's something wrong with my child. He can't dance. But it is something that people are looking into. Oddly, the study of birds like cockatoos and parrots, as well as dolphins, may help us solve this puzzle. They have well-developed language centers in their brain, and all of them, cockatoos, I'm sure you've seen them bounce up and down to a song. Dolphins will do exactly the same thing, and they get into the beat better than some people. But then again, California sea lions and rats, both are considered to be non-vocal, also get into the groove, so who knows? And one more thing, a recent study says that you can get people to dance more vigorously if you incorporate certain inaudible low frequencies into the music. This is something that electronic dance music DJs are starting to use right now. They'll put this really low inaudible tone in everything that they do, and that subconsciously, for whatever reason, gets people to dance more vigorously. Now, let's say you have a friend who has terrible taste in music. Researchers at McGill University in Montreal discovered that musical taste can be manipulated in mere minutes just by offering the brain a little magnetic zap. So a little bit of electrical shock therapy to the front of the brain. They could increase or decrease the amount of enjoyment people got from music by using something called transcranial magnetic stimulation. Again, this has something to do with the regulation of dopamine in the brain. So if you have a friend who has terrible taste in music, you could send them to some place that would give them electroshock therapy, gently, and they may return a much cooler person. But whatever you do, do not try this at home. So that's all I got here. It's this quick little tour through this 3-pound lump of fat in your head. I find it absolutely thrilling and interesting because you never know, how a song is going to affect you or why. And it's just one of the wonderful things about being human is that we have this gift of music for some reason that we should all cherish and exercise as much as we possibly can. So, thank you so much. Okay.
Oh, we have questions for
Okay,
you.
go.
We have questions. Fascinating stuff.
It's weird. It's extremely weird, and I can't get enough of it.
Here's what's weird. I picked up on two things. Number one, I'm glad that there's a medical reason that I can't dance. Mm-hmm. So that makes me feel happy.
You are legitimately brain damaged, yes.
And of all of the stuff that you talked about, the one thing that I remember is Bob Dylan and the Beatles were smoking pot backstage at Buckingham Palace in 1965.
It was in the bathroom, actually, and the Beatles were there to get their CBEs, and Bob Dylan was there, and he took them into the bathroom and said, "Hey, try this." There you go.
Of course, we're all wondering, was the Queen anywhere to be found in this?
It'd be interesting, wouldn't it?
Before we get to questions from the audience, a little bit of history of Alan Cross.
Okay.
How did you get so interested in music? Where did it start for you?
It began 5 minutes after 9 on April the 6th, 1968. That was a Saturday. It was my 6th birthday, and my grandmother gave me a transistor radio. I have no idea why. I didn't ask for one. My parents didn't tell her to get me one, but I got one just the same. And I was growing up in a small town north of Winnipeg. We had 3 TV channels, one of which was in French. And the only radio that I knew was what was played in the car and on the kitchen counter. But with my own little radio, I realized that there was a much bigger world out there. And I started tuning in to stations not only from Winnipeg, and there was more than one radio station in Winnipeg, shock and surprise, but also stations from Denver and Chicago and Minneapolis. And even on cold winter nights, you could hear some Spanish coming from someplace, which would have been one of those 500,000-watt border blasters from Mexico. And it just, wow, this is really cool. I would like to be part of this one day. All these voices and noise and information and news coming from somewhere. And I became a fan of listening to the radio from the age of 6. A couple of years after that, we went to my uncle's place to pick up a puppy on a Sunday afternoon. My uncle was working for the Manitoba telephone system, and he had a side hustle servicing jukeboxes. And that day, he had just happened to go on his rounds, putting in new 45s into the jukeboxes and taking the old ones out. So he had a big box of worn-out 45s.
Do we need to explain what a 45 is for some in the audience?
Anybody not clear? 7-inch single, big thing? Yeah, big hole in the center. And he said, "Do you want this box? I'm going to throw it out." And that box became the beginning of my record collection. The other really important thing was I went to a high school with 450 people in this small town, and unless you played the worst thing that you could be is good in school, then bad at hockey, then bad at curling. I was good in school, bad at hockey, bad at curling. So the only way I could keep myself from getting beat up by the jocks was to have something that they didn't have. So I had always been having part-time jobs, so I had some disposable income, and I spent all my money on either records or stereo equipment. So I became the music nerd of the school, and I kind of liked that. Didn't get me laid or anything like that, but it certainly kept me from being beaten up in a lot more. After that, I wanted to be I didn't want to be a disc jockey. I wanted to be a newsman, an anchor, a reporter, a foreign correspondent, something like that. So when I finally got to university, I decided that what I wanted to do was, train myself in political science, history, sociology, French, all the things that I thought would make me a good news person. Fast forward a couple of years, I get my first full-time job. I'm going to be hired as the news person as soon as the news guy quits. So I get 6 weeks in the summer of 1983 being on the radio playing records. The guy quits right on schedule. So after Labor Day 1983, I reached my career goal of being a newsman. And I hated it. I just utterly hated it. And I lasted 23 days. Fortunately, towards the end of that 23 days, I got a call from a radio station that you know well called KX96 in Brandon, Manitoba, who were looking for a new person to do evenings. I left Kenora, Ontario, which is where I had this job. I left Kenora so fast that my landlord sent the sheriff after me for non-payment of rent. And from that moment, in the October of 1983, I've been playing records and talking about them on the radio.
So you started in a small-town radio station.
Yep.
You sort of worked your way up traditionally.
Yes.
Eventually, you wind up at the legendary CFNY, The Edge now, as it's called, in Toronto.
Yep.
You worked there for many years. You were on the radio for many
Well,
years.
let me stop you there for just a second. I'm going to give you a little background to that. Remember I said that I was the guy that went out and bought records because I had the part-time jobs? So, January 9th, 1980, at 5 minutes after 12 noon, I have brain damage. I just remember these things. I lived 113 steps from the school. And rather than stay in the school lunchroom, all my buddies would come over and have lunch at my place, which meant we didn't have to deal with the jocks. It also meant that we could listen to whatever new records I bought. So that day, I had bought a new record. Everybody was a fan of this band and came over to have a listen. So we crack open the shrink wrap, put it on the turntable, and start playing it. Side one, track one, Rush, Permanent Waves. And I'm going through the lyrics, because at this time I'm already thinking about getting into radio. Oh, this is really cool. My favorite band has written a song about radio. Oh, wait, my favorite band has written a song about a radio station, a specific radio station, because at the bottom of the lyrics it says, inspired by the spirit of radio, alive and well in Brampton so far. I go, wow, that's cool. That's a radio station. Well, wouldn't it be cool to work there one day? 6 years later, I walk in the door. And I've been there ever since.
Yeah. And now you're working on a documentary about the radio station.
Yeah, we have something, we got really, really tired of seeing all these documentaries from the United States and the UK and elsewhere about radio stations that changed the world. And frankly, they may have, and some of them definitely did, but these documentaries were really boring. So there's a group of 5 of us who are the executive producers of a documentary that will look at the spirit of radio years from 1978 to 1992 and talk about how CFNY influenced music, not just in Toronto or Southern Ontario or Canada, but also across North America and around the world. And so since we started filming back in November, we have been, we've done a ton of interviews in Toronto. We've been to Vancouver, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Las Vegas. We did London, Glasgow, Manchester, and Liverpool in 5 days, talking to various artists. And then we've got a few more coming up as well, including Geddy and Alex from Rush, because they got to tell the Spirit of Radio story.
When does it come out?
We have to hand it in early November. We hope to have a trailer sooner. We had a call about this last night. We hope to have a trailer sooner. And if things go according to plan, it will be debuted, premiered, maybe at South by Southwest next March, or maybe at the Hot Docs Festival. We'll see.
I know there's questions in the audience. There were a couple that were submitted in advance that I want to get to here, and then we'll ask some people in the audience. You've interviewed just about everybody in the music industry. One question here is, what was your most challenging interview, and how did you overcome it?
Ooh, okay. Morrissey. Morrissey has a long-standing reputation of toying with journalists. You ask him a question, and he will be evasive or he will lie. So you have to be very, very careful when talking to him, because you want to get on his right side as soon as possible so that he will answer the questions that you pose him. Now, there were 4 stages of interviewing. The first is you have to show your interview subject that you're behaving properly. You're not overly familiar, you provide the appropriate amount of deference, you're dressed properly. It's called propriety, so make sure propriety. Secondly, you have to show the person that you know what you're talking about. So you're not some dumb kid just like winging it with dumb questions. Third, you have to make them comfortable. So you're behaving properly, you've shown them you know what you're doing, and they begin to relax. And when they begin to relax, the fourth thing comes in, and that's trust. And when an interview subject tells you, trusts you, they will tell you anything. So, Morrissey. Back 2002-ish, somewhere around there, he releases an album on Sanctuary Records called You Are the Quarry. And the record label wanted to do a big record release splash for this. So I was invited down to Los Angeles, specifically the Beverly Hills Hotel, specifically Bungalow 22, which is where JFK and Marilyn Monroe got it on, to do this particular interview. And I was with Mike, who is my sound guy. And I'm panicking about this because we had been playing Morrissey's music either as a solo artist or as a member of the Smiths since 1983, and we'd never, ever gotten an interview with him, so I got to come back with something. However, I am told in advance by the publicist that you have to stick to the subject of the new album. Any other attempt to talk about the Smiths or ex-bandmates or anything like that, and the interview is over and we will stalk out. Okay. Challenge accepted. So we go into the bungalow, and it's quite a big place. So I'm sitting in a chair. There's a table over here. Mike, the sound guy, is sitting over here, and across from me is a couch. And behind the couch is an entrance to a kitchen. So Morrissey breezes in with the publicist. He sits down, and he says, okay, let's start talking about the new album. Meanwhile, his publicist starts serving him cup of tea after cup of tea after cup of tea. So I said, okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to put my phone here on the table. And if it rings, I'm really sorry, but I have to answer it. My wife and I don't have any kids. We have a dog. And she's at the vet's today. We don't know what's wrong. We're very, very afraid. If the phone rings, it's my wife with news about the dog. Morrissey says, absolutely. If that phone rings, I insist you answer it. Not only that, after you get the news, no matter what it is, I wish to talk to your wife and give her as much encouragement as I possibly can, regardless of the situation. I go, oh, great. Well, thank you. That's really nice of you. Hey, you know, do you still have an interest in that elephant sanctuary in Thailand? Well, yes, I do. What is this elephant sanctuary all about? Well, these elephants, these poor elephants that are used for the amusement of tourists or used for in logging camps, you know, after a while they're turned away, they've got no place to go, so we give them a spot, an environment where they can live out their lives being elephants. Oh, where is it? It's up near Chiang Mai. You know, we're going to Thailand, and, you know, what's the name of it? He gave me the name. So, okay, we have to make sure we go. He goes, absolutely, you should. Elephants need our help. Oh, okay, sorry, we better get on with the interview. So we get on with the interview, we talk about the album that nobody really cares about, and we get to the end of my allotted 20 minutes, and I say, well, you know, thank you very much. You know, we've been a supporter of your music since 1983. We've never had an interview with you before, and it would be remiss of me if I didn't ask a few Smiths questions. Now, this entire time, the publicist has been standing behind Morrissey, behind the couch, and when I mentioned this, she's like looking like a gargoyle, and her eyes grow big, and she starts to advance around the couch to grab Morrissey by the arm and drag him out of the room. And Morrissey goes, what would you like to know? So for 10 minutes, we had a conversation about the Smiths. Fantastic. He gets up, he signs my Spin magazine, he was on the cover, we shake hands, and he goes. Love it. So Mike says to me, as everybody's gone, he's packing up, are you going to call your wife? I go, why? Well, the dog's fine.
Yeah. We don't even have a dog.
And you're not going to Thailand, are you? No. Get a little bit of subterfuge, but again, you know, when you're an interviewer, you are the proxy for every fan of that interview subject, and it's up to you. It is your job to get the story. And sometimes a little white lie helps.
Let's quickly talk about music today versus what some people feel was the golden era of music. Some say the 70s is when the best music was written. Some say the 60s. Some go back even further. Today, music is written on computers with algorithms. You don't even need to know how to sing. There's auto-tune. Music...
Google has something that was just released today. They will write you a 5-minute song based on text instructions.
So my question is music today as good as it once was? There's been a ton of articles written about this.
All right.
What do you think?
I will say this. Every generation has a biological right to believe the music of their youth is the greatest music of all time. And this has been a debate that I have actually traced all the way back to Aristotle, who in his writings talked about the unruly youth and their music of the day that can only lead to ruin. So that's more than 2,000 years ago. Every generation goes through this. I mean, for example, in the 1920s, when everybody was into jazz, everybody was lamenting the death of the waltz because everything had been in waltz time. In 1906, John Philip Sousa, who was the great composer of marching music was a big, big deal. It was the heavy metal of its day between 1895 and 1906. And John Philip Sousa wrote an essay that was widely published that talked about the curse and scourge of mechanical music, because we had just begun to capture music on wax cylinders and on flat rotating discs. And he thought that this capturing of music would standardize music and hurt creativity and therefore be a detriment to society. So we've been going through this year after year after year. Frankly, I agree with you, today's music leaves me cold, but I'm 61 years old, I've seen an awful lot of music go by. When I have a bad day, you know what I do? I go back to the music of my youth, and that's my comfort food. Now I'm going to tell you a quick story about this, and this may have to do with music of the brain as well. We have a sweet spot when it comes to our music, our coming of age years with music. It's usually from the time we enter high school to the time we get out into the real world. So let's put that at age 14 to, let's just say for the sake of it, age 24, so a 10-year period. During that time, we are so deep into music. We have time, we have energy, we have money to get involved in music. And not only that, we use music as a way to figure out who we are as people. And then, once we figure out who we are as people, we then use music to project this identity to everybody else. It becomes a central portion of our existence for that 10-year period. But then you get out of high school, you get out of university or college, and you get into the real world, you get a job, you get a mortgage, you get a family, you get kids, you got all these other things, and eventually you just don't have enough time, or at least the same amount of time as you did to get into music. And besides, by the time you're 27, 28, 29 years old, you got a pretty cool idea of who you are, so you don't need it as much, whether or not you know it or not. And that goes on for a while. You start saying, you know, music was so much better when I was young. And then you get to age 41 and a half. And at that point, a bunch of studies have shown that people go, wait a second, I'm not old. I'm still down with the kids. I still know what good music is. And for about 18 months, you get back into music, trying to get back into it as much as you possibly can. By the time you turn 43, it's like, forget it. I'm just going to go back and listen to my old CDs and vinyl. It's the circle of life. It doesn't change. If there's a lot of good music out there today, but it's not going to have the same impact on you as it did when you were a kid. That's a real, like I'm avoiding answering the question and putting it in biological terms, but that's the truth.
Questions from the audience? Yes.
I was on the radio. I'll answer that one first. That would be 1990, March of 1990. A 12-inch single came into the radio station, and I think I may have been one of the first people to play it on the radio. Because back then, we would be getting imports. There was no internet, so what we would have to do is go down to the record peddler at the time, and we would have first dibs on the imports that came in from England, and that's where we would have gotten it from. So we rushed it back to the radio station and played it, and might have been me, might have been somebody else, but I was certainly one of the first people. And what gives me chills, there's a lot of songs, and it depends on the volume with me. If it's a song that I really like and it's really loud, like I'm gone. I vibrate like a banjo. But I've never really. I'll give you one. the first Oasis album, definitely maybe, opens up with a song called Rock and Roll Star. You play that song sufficiently loud and sing along with it, that'll do it for me. Is that ever going to stop? Nope. It used to be, back before the internet came along, that you went on tour to lose money, but to advertise the fact that you have a new album, and you would make up any money you lost on tour through record sales. That has completely flipped on its head. The only place where revenue is coming in right now is playing live. And artists and managers have figured out that for many, many, many years, concert tickets were underpriced relative to the value of a ticket to a Leaf game, a ticket to a big theater production. So they have been edging things up. David Bowie was the first to predict this back in 1997. He said that we're going to, in the future, all our money is going to come from sources other than selling music. And he was completely 100% right. So artists and managers and agents and promoters now get very, very granular about their ticket pricing. And I could sit here and talk for about 3 hours on the vagaries and the complexities of concert tickets. It is one of the most opaque and one of the most frustrating consumer experiences anywhere in the world, and it's not going to get any better.
People also think that musicians make money off of Spotify.
They can, but the numbers are a lot different. If you were to sell 1 million copies of a song, you would make a lot of money. If somebody were to listen, if you were to have 1 million listens of that song, 1 million listens is nothing. It's really nothing. You know that so far this year, actually to the end of March, so March 31st, you want to guess how many songs were streamed around the planet? 1 trillion. And that's divided up among 100 million songs. Each of the streaming music services have access to 100 million songs-ish. And every day, how many songs do you think are uploaded every day to the streaming music services? Can you guess? Every day, the answer is, on average, 94,500. Every day. And of that 94,500, only 4% come from the big record labels. The other 96% come from indie labels and do-it-yourself musicians. So that means only 4,000 songs from that 95,400, or 95,500, are coming from established major label acts. The rest are coming from who knows where. And it is estimated that on Spotify, 20% of all the songs in the library have never been heard once. So if you have a Spotify account, you can go to a site called Forgotify, and you can get a steady stream of songs that no one has ever heard before. Chances are these songs will be heard just the one time, but that's what it'll be. So there's too much music out there. Nobody can keep track. This is another reason why we're so disenchanted with the state of today's music, is because we're overwhelmed. We back in the day, everybody was kind of on the same page. When I was in grade 10, for example, there were 30 people in the class. 5 of them were country music fans, 5 of them were pop music fans, and the other 20 were Kiss fans. And the reason they were Kiss fans is because the guy on the radio told us that Kiss was the greatest band of all time. We went to the drugstore and picked up a copy of Cream or Circus magazine. Who was on the cover? Kiss. We went to the record store in the mall. Who was racked up front? Kiss. So music had a center. And we were more or less listening to the same things. Now, not at all.
Kiss was my first concert.
Mine too.
I was like 12 years old in Winnipeg. $4.20 was the ticket to see Kiss. Other questions? Way up there.
Yes. Do you want to handle this one? I've answered this. Dave and I have handled this question throughout our entire careers. The reason is that radio stations have one chance to grab your attention when you turn them on. So they can't afford to make a mistake by playing the wrong song at the wrong time. So songs are researched and audiences are researched to death. And it is determined that these group of songs from this artist are the ones that are going to keep people listening. If we play a song that's unfamiliar, chances are for the regular radio listener, and there are billions of them, while there may be millions of us, there are billions of regular radio listeners, they will tune out, and we can't take that risk.
And radio is a business, and the more people who listen means the more advertisers radio gets. And to get the masses to listen, you need to play the mass popular music. If you get too niche, it just doesn't work from a business model.
Now, back in the day, with CFNY, the Spirit of Radio years, if you wanted to hear a hot song, the only place to hear a hot song or a hot band was on the radio. Right. You had to sit there and wait. I bet you a lot of you remember running home from school and turning on Much Music, waiting and hoping that your favorite video was going to come on. Because there was this artificial scarcity created by these cultural gatekeepers, radio stations, video channels, music magazines, record stores, and record labels. And at that point, if you were a radio station with a certain amount of reach and power and pull, you could get away with playing all these different songs. And CFNY back in the day, we did. Believe me, when I got there, there were 20,000 albums in the library, and you had to know every single one of them. And you could get away with it because back then you had an audience that was patient. Oh, I don't like this song, but the next song coming up may be something really, really cool, so I'm going to stick through it. People have no such attention span these days anymore. None.
We have time for one more quick question. Yes.
I have that problem right now with Katy Perry's "Eye of the Tiger," or whatever that goddamn song is called.
Really?
Because I'm watching MSNBC and there's all these public service announcements that, pay it forward, try kindness. And there's one version where Katy Perry sings this song over and over, and it comes up and it's in my head and I can't get it out. The answer is your brain. Remember we talked about the 15-second buffering? So a song clip will get caught in the buffer. And you'll notice that when that song that's going around in your head, it's only about 15 seconds long. It's the one bit. It's about 15 seconds. So it goes over and over and over and over again on a loop. This can be terribly debilitating for some people, and they require medication. They can. There was a woman in England.
It's why she drinks so much wine.
Yeah. There was a woman in England that had this, I can't remember what the song was, but it had been in her head for 34 years. And they had to finally, drug her to get rid of this. Or maybe it was electroshock therapy. It was really, something was really, really serious. I can't remember, but it was some pop song. So the only thing that you can really do, I've been told, is surrender to it, let the whole song play through, maybe pull it up and listen to it, just to get it out of your system. So it purges the buffer in your brain.
All right. We are at time. Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, you're welcome. This was fun.
We really appreciate it. Alan Cross. Thank you so much. I want to quickly again thank our sponsors for tonight's event, Huron University College, our official season and exclusive educational sponsor. Thank you so much to Huron University College. Corey Crossman and the City of London's Music Department. This event is a London UNESCO City of Music supported project, and Corey, we thank you so much for that. Trevor Murray and the entire team at Beck Hearing Aid Center. Nice to see that, or nice to hear that you're all about hearing aids and helping musicians. And Brian and his team from Streaming Inc., a London-based full-service production company, Ontario's first choice in virtual, hybrid, and classic in-person live streaming. Brian, thank you so much for your help with this event. And thank you for your support. We can't do this without you, so thank you so much. We'll see you at our next event, which will be right here on May 17th with our mayor, Josh Morgan. We're going to find out how his brain works and what kind of music he likes and all of that kind of stuff. May 17th, right here at Huron University. There's a post-reception right across the hall in the Medline Students' Commons. Please come and join us. Thank you again for coming.